Okay, and this is the Convo. And today, actually, Marco is back. Marco, introduce yourself.
Again? Okay, I'm Marco.
Awesome. I'm Adam, your fabulous host, and we're again here with, one of our best friends here, Piotr. Say something.
Hi guys.
Awesome, awesome. So, today I think we can talk about something really cool, which is going to be, it's going to be the Warsaw Conference regarding Poland and Iran. And then we're going to talk about NATO and NATO and the U.S., the hypothetical situation, and we're going to get into that later on. And we're also going to jump into some deconstruction and anatomy of the culture, and also we're going to talk about some Super Bowl because Marco asked me to. Okay, so let's begin with the thing that is going to be lingering in February, I believe. I believe it's going to be on the 11th or 12th. There's going to be a conference in Warsaw regarding the Iran, regarding the stability in general in the Middle East, the safety, the freedom, as Mike Pompeo said. And there's a couple interesting things, because Iran is apparently not invited. And our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Chaputovich, has not really sent an invitation. And it's funny because it's all going to be surrounding the whole idea of Iran in the region, because Iran is known to be a superpower in the Middle Eastern region. So, Marco, how about we start with you? What do you think about this? How about you maybe give us a little bit of background of what you know about the whole thing, what you think about it, and what do you think about the whole idea of Iran not being invited? Is that a good move, bad move? And then we're going to jump into Piotr.
So it's definitely happening?
Well,
from my understanding, it was like, it was proposed, and then some people, and then like the whole issue that Russia's not going to come, that Iran's not going to come, that it might not, didn't like seem like it was happening.
I think it's happening.
Okay. I think it seemed like one of these things that was just announced like out of the blue, that there wasn't really this, like you said, invitation to Iran, which is, even though it's talking about and dealing with Iran is a little weird. It's kind of was something I think like the U.S. probably proposed, and that maybe Poland was like, okay, we'll do it. It didn't really get much press in the U.S., and most of the press I saw about it was from Polish, English publications. And when it did get a little bit of news, I did read about it in the U.S. It's like, oh, this thing that the Trump administration's doing in Poland about Iran, but yet Iran's not coming. So like, it's like is it really even anything? Like,
it's not invited, basically. So
it's kind of like, I guess like my liberal sources were kind of like, it's kind of a joke. They looked at it, they didn't take it very seriously. Not much talked about it because I guess it's happening in a month. It'd be interesting to see what comes out of it. I'm not too hopeful that anything positive. It might be just like some grandstanding and some statements get made, and that's probably all you hear about, and then it's over. So I don't really know, from Poland's standpoint of view, like what they're trying to hope to get out of it, and why not invite Iran? Like there is some deep connections with Iran and Poland that definitely the Iranian foreign minister made comments about regarding. So yeah, that's my vote.
Well, I like that you mentioned like why Poland did that. Well, it also gives me the consideration like why we doing this, since we are not post-colonial country which been involved actually in the Middle East, except the mission in Afghanistan, for example, and Polish soldiers' participation over there. So another reflection brings me that why not Polish ministry first announced about this conference, but actually the Mike Pompeo, I think, said that for the first time. So that also brings my attention why we don't do say about it like out loud.
Is he even still in the administration anymore, Mike Pompeo?
Well, yeah, he's on a tour of the Middle East right now, isn't he?
Because there's so many changes, I can't keep track anymore.
Well, he's way better than Tillerson, I think. Though. So I'm sorry. Wait, but hold on. But back to the topic, because that's an interesting point. Why hasn't Poland officially come out with that? And it's funny because the other, I think today I read that even Netanyahu is set to say a speech in the conference, and the ambassador of Israel here is also excited in a way about it, because what she's saying is that Poland is actually a very good place, because it's a very neutral country when it comes to the ties of the Middle East. We were not really greatly involved in there. Let's not mention Iraq. Let's not mention Afghanistan, because those are things that were not spearheaded by us, even though we are one of the forces that has participated in the invasion of Iraq, along with Australia and the U.S. But here's the question, like, do you think that not inviting Iran to the entire conference, what does that show? And it's Poland not inviting Iran. It's not any other country, at least we don't know of, right? We don't know if, for example, Pompeo or Donald Trump texted Chaputowicz or tweeted at him privately and said, "Hey man, don't invite Iran." We don't know that. But why are we suddenly coming out with the initiative to not invite a major player in the region in which it's the conference is going to take place? What I'm saying, the question here is, why is this kind of Treaty of Versailles? Why is Iran, Germany, not invited into the settlement of the entire region? And it's a key player. What do you guys think, Piotr?
Well, in my opinion, Americans, of course, they're playing huge role in it. As you mentioned, we don't know about some secret conversation maybe between Chaputowicz and Trump, for example. But it is obvious that since Khamenei revolution in Iran, United States and Iran, it was not a war over there, right? But the relations between them, they are very bad for decades, and in my opinion, not inviting Iran, the message coming from the United States about their lack of understanding according to their policy. And according to the Poland, which doing this conference, in my opinion, this is another move of our politician party in Poland. I mean the Justice and Law. I mean peace, because I think again they want to gain some electors regarding to their participation in the international society. So I think that's why this is a Polish role in it. I think that's why we're doing that. That's why we are proud of it, and we want that to be like spread around the world. That yes, we're doing that. Yes, we holding this huge conference, same as it was with the climate conference. So that's according to your first comment. And to the second one, why Iran is not invited? Yeah, that's my opinion about Trump and his involvement in it. So
and it's also like the EU is not too happy, or the EU as a whole is not too happy about Poland hosting. And I don't think many countries like France or Germany are going to be attending it either. It also puts at odds because it puts at odds their stance with terms of the anti-nuclear missile alliance they had with Iran, which the U.S.
Well, the nuclear deal.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that
Yeah.
that is a continuation. I believe that is going to be I believe that there is a clear attempt to continue the sanctions, which under the nuclear deal they were lifted, but now they're put back into place. But I think it's from what I read, I think it's quite a good idea to curb Iran's nuclear potential in the region, because the thing is, a nuclear weapon is one of those I would say muscles that you tend to flex internationally on the international arena, but you don't really tend to use. It's kind of those kind of deterrents. It's not really a weapon you wish to use, and it seems to me Iran, statistically speaking, the highest the highest I'd say sponsor of terrorism around the world, known as, according to the to the global terrorism index, to the GTI. It seems that in the hands of, I would say, many people with radical thoughts, it would not be a good idea. And I'm not saying the current government has such plans, but once a country has nuclear weapons, the governments change, and we never know what kind of radicals or extremists we can face upon, and this applies to actually every country possessing nuclear weapons. So I think it's also a matter of, a matter of security in the region. In the case of, it's better that no country has nuclear weapons rather than, this country with the biggest probability of its usage, I would say. And sure, you can argue Israel has potential nuclear weapons, but we're not really sure. We're not 100% sure.
I mean, I think it's pretty internationally accepted that Israel has nuclear weapons. But also there's, like, Japan can, supposedly produce nuclear weapons within 6 months. If you have any nuclear power, you are able to, not too easily, but readily produce nuclear weapons. I think it's one of those, like in terms of North Korea and Iran, they saw, I believe, like Iraq and how it was able to fall to the U.S. because it didn't have nuclear weapons. And if you have nuclear weapons, you can protect yourself from any external enemies. It's a big deterrent. It's like, speak softly but carry a big stick. It's that big stick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in my opinion, Iran now, they realizing how bad situation for them it is, because we see from the geopolitical view on Iran, right? They are surrounded by countries which each of them, they are threats to them. We have Iraq, which have military base, American military base. We have the countries of the Persian Gulf. We have the contingent which is stationed in Afghanistan. So actually every border of Iran is somehow surrounded by American troops. So in my opinion, that's why they also want to gain the power. And of course, the huge role plays, as you mentioned, Israel, which let's say it's huge Jewish lobby in the surrounding of Trump. We have even his the husband of Ivanka,
Jared Kushner,
which also plays a role in American politics. And I think that's also plays huge role in policy towards Iran. I mean, the Israel. This is like I would say the buffer country between the policy of American and Iran, right?
Well, I mean, Israel, I think from the current Trump administration, it has been one of the most, I would say, lenient towards Israel and one of the most pro-Israeli governments that I have seen in my lifetime. And, I can say that clearly because, it's way more supportive than, for example, Obama's or Clinton's administration that I can think of right off my head. Now, about nuclear weapons, I was always fascinated by the idea of what if Poland had like a nuclear weapon, or what if we had the capacity or like the potential for like nuclear weapon carrying systems and stuff. Wouldn't that kind of place us in a really cool place so I would say, I wouldn't even say the European Union, I would just say the international arena, How fun would it, well, not fun, but I'm just saying, like, how interesting would it be if Poland was one of the nuclear powers, Because in a way, if you think about it, Ukraine was a nuclear power because it did have, nuclear weaponry on its soil during the Cold War.
Chernobyl.
Well, no, that's a nuclear. That's a nuclear power plant.
Is it Belarus or Ukraine?
No, it's Ukraine.
That's in Ukraine. But, Belarus, we don't know if Belarus, has still nuclear weapons. We don't know about it. Maybe that they're ex-Soviet, missiles or something like that.
Have Kaliningrad, which have the
yeah, but then again, you would have to assume like that Kaliningrad, therefore Polish Królewiec would have to be Polish by definition. Therefore, we could annex it and have nuclear weapons.
Just hope it wasn't built by the Soviets.
No, as you starting to.
Well, actually, hold on. I would say that actually the Soviets were dominant when it comes to rocket technology. That's why they were the first ones in space, the first animals in space, human, satellite. The only way the Americans were able to beat them is because they were just late to the party and they're like, oh, we know what we'll do. Like, we know what can happen. We're going to send someone to the moon. And that obviously won the space race, I think.
Yeah, I don't want to go to the space race. I think, like, if you go talk about the space race, you have to talk also about the different social and cultural, like, opposites, how the U.S. wanted to make itself look superior to that of Soviets because they saw Soviets in space, and that was a threat to their system of governments and culture, was that we can't have this, opposite be better than us in space. But go back to like nuclear. I believe that the Chernobyl collapsed like in the 90s, 80s, and then there was another nuclear facility in Ukraine which was shut down because of the fear that it might also lead to another Chernobyl.
Well, no, in Chernobyl there was four, I would say, plants. There was 4 reactors.
Yeah.
One of them was shut down immediately after the collapse.
Yeah.
Then the third one exploded. I don't want to get all wrong with this, but one of them.
That's
One of them.
nuclear facility in Ukraine.
No. It was the same facility, which is actually funny because what happened was I think it was reactor number 3 that exploded.
They shut down.
They shut down number 3.
They shut down, and after they shut down the reactor number 2, and actually the other reactors, they were working for a few more years.
Yeah, no, actually they were working I think until like the 2000s or more or less, which is weird.
You mentioned really like interesting like case about what would happen if Poland was in possession or have ability to build a nuclear weapon. I think it would be risky because of our neighbors. I mean, how many nuclear facilities we could build according to our neighbor in Russia, which have plenty of those, and that would create it sort of like clash again, and they wouldn't allow us to do this. I think that would be the
Well, why are we dependent on what they say though? That's my question.
Let's suppose like
we are not dependent on what they say, but let's say we are dependent on NATO and United Nations, and I think United Nations they would raise their voice because that would be a threat for a peace.
Well, I think when it comes to military weaponry, then I would agree with Piotr. But I think I think in order for Poland ever to have nuclear weapons, we first need to rely on nuclear energy, and I think nuclear energy is one of the cleanest ways of obtaining energy, most efficient. Let's look at France. More than 70% of its energy is from nuclear energy, and if we think about it, Poland has the brown and the black coal, which is, the brown coal is like the worst coal you can have. No wonder the air quality here is just absolutely. It's not even funny anymore. It's pathetic because if you laugh, you can kill yourself basically. Because if you inhale so many of those PMs, like the amount of people ending up in hospital because of lung problems. I'm not saying there's a strict connection, but there is certainly a correlation between the amount of time we spend outside, between the air quality. And, I think it's also because of the amount of people that are basically, coming back home. And simply, I think it's this kind of greed and just laziness that they're like, oh, instead of buying buying cut wood, I'm going to throw a tire in my oven, because, I need to get warm, And I'm not saying all people do that, but there's certainly a significant amount of people that do that, which cause the current, I would say, air catastrophe. Because if one person does it, there's no problem. But it's a significant amount of people doing it, Marco.
Well, right now, actually, in Poland was process. The one woman accused Polish government for not deploying certain institutions controlling the air pollution, and because of that she won in a court, and Polish government right now have to pay, I think it's small amount, around like 5,000 Polish zloty, which is like what 1,100 euros, to some non-governmental institution which take care for people with cancer. But that's the proof that actually, because of the air pollution, you can go to the court and you can win with a government because of their policy. So that's what you mentioned. But I think we should come back to our...
Well, and talking about hypothetical situations, actually, I think we can move from this topic of Poland and its problems. We're going to talk about it a bit later. And I'm willing to, because I love doing that.
I just wanted to say one thing about nuclear
Fine.
power.
Yes, please.
Something that we have an issue in the United States is...
Guns?
But nuclear power is that, what do you do with the waste of nuclear power? Because it degrades to a point where you can't use it completely, but to a point where you have to get rid of it. And like, disposing of nuclear waste is really dangerous because it takes thousands of years.
Yeah, the half-lives are impossible.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And there's a facility that the U.S. government built in Nevada that's supposed to hold all the nuclear waste. but nobody wants to transport it through their state or through their town, through their city, by rail, by truck, just because of the risk that it poses to, say, if it tips over, if it spills. That's huge devastation. I don't know how, say, Japan or even France deals with their waste, but it's been something like that's really not as much talked about as it should be talked about in the United States, but it's I think a crisis that could potentially happen that just fortunately has not happened. So if you were to have a nuclear power plant, a couple of nuclear power plants in Poland, where would that spent fuel?
Well, I don't do it often. I'm gonna admit I'm not an expert on this, so I don't know. But the thing is, if you think about it, if we suddenly stop using coal or the gas that we are heavily dependent on Russia, I think that we're gonna have ourselves, more and more interesting deals coming from Western Europe, which are also, interested in this, in the entire idea of, reducing pollution and, all that. I'd say the carbon emissions and stuff.
Well, I think the great example, because you mentioned France, I have even greater example, which is Norway, country which is rely their market on the oil, which they don't use at all, according to the producing of the energy, because all of them, I think 99% of their energy comes from the green plants. I mean, the wind farms, from dams, etc. So I think that's the way which we should develop. I mean, and they are not even in possession of the I forgot the name of this special infrastructure which provide you like from this hot springs energy. It's geothermal energy, which is like developed in Iceland. I mean, Norway doesn't have that, but they rely also on the green energy, which I think, in my opinion, this is the future, not even the nuclear plant, because as Marco mentioned, what about the waste which are produced in those nuclear plants?
Well, every type of energy has its, it has its pros and cons. Like, for example, the wind farms, the big fans. There's a strong correlation between that, between the wind farms and the reduction of certain species of birds in the U.S. If we're talking about dams, we're also putting a heavy impact on the waterways and the natural, flow of water. So we're also, in a way, indirectly damaging the ecosystem that we are taking the water away from. So, I mean, there's always a pros and cons. But coming back to the idea of hypothetical situations that I started off with Poland and nuclear energy or nuclear weaponry, I would also like to roll back a little bit and introduce a hypothetical situation of the U.S. leaving NATO, because that has been also, that's a topic that has been also talked about in the U.S. About Trump, I would say even attempting to tell people that threatening, other NATO members that I am indeed leaving. However, we know this won't happen, but it got me thinking, like, what if? I mean, for one think NATO would collapse, because that's the entire point of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty, organization. It's all about the U.S. That's what I think. What do you guys think?
I agree.
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with you. I think if, say, U.S. left, you would definitely see NATO collapse, but you would see, I think, something happen in the EU. Because the EU would join some of its former NATO members, maybe not Turkey, but they would have some military cooperation that kind of similar to that of NATO.
Well,
it would just further confirms to me, like, even talking about leaving NATO, like how Trump is, Comrade Trump, not President Trump. He's aligned more with. Seems to be aligned more with Russian interests than that of the United States.
Oh, come on, don't give me.
I think like when we are talking about U.S. withdrawing from the North Atlantic Pact, we should also think about why they wanted to do this, because we have to analyze why. And because everyone says that it's all about these 2%, but we have to mention also how the military units from NATO members participate in particular conflicts over NATO membership. I mean, we mention, for example, Afghanistan, where most of the European countries they were telling to their militaries that they shouldn't get involved into the actions. I mean, into the military missions. Most of those missions were held under the humanitarian missions, right? And it was even few cases in Afghanistan where American troops were like caught in the trap by Talibs, and they were calling for their help. And then they heard response from some European units that we cannot help you because you are in a hotspot, and when it's gonna get calm, then we're gonna be able to help you. So it's also like the Trump rhetoric comes from here, that like why we need NATO and the other participants from NATO where they cannot help our boys. I mean, when they cannot help our boys during the war, right? That's, I think, what we have to also mention. It's not even about those 2%, because, come on, we look on the example of Germany. They are like in the top 10 countries which spending on the military, and most of their military are not even able to participate in the military conflict. Like from the 2017 studies by McKinsey tells that actually none of the submarines of Germans, they are able to participate right now in the conflict, same as the planes, none, zero. So what's their usage in the NATO except like giving money? So I think that's the result. It's not just about these 2%. And I think that's why NATO doesn't comes with their mission, which was applied during the Cold War, during our times, because during the Cold Wars we had one opponent, which was Russia, I mean Soviet Union. Right now we have fight with terrorism, and terrorism is different way of fighting, it's different way of war. We are also witness of the moment when wars are changing. For example, war on the Crimea, which is proxy war. So that's why I think NATO also should reconsider what is their mission.
I agree with you. I think it's good to point out that the only time Article 5
Yes.
has been
You should know
used,
that, man. Don't look at me like...
has been used during by the U.S. during Afghanistan. But it's also, I think, mentioned that it's 2%. And 2% is just supposed to be like this bottom, like you're not supposed to go below 2%. But yet, I think most of the countries are actually below 2%.
Except for Poland.
Except for Poland, except US.
I have data. It's Estonia, Poland, UK, and Romania. And the closest to the 2% is Lithuania and France. So we have just few countries over the... How many right now? 25 countries are in the NATO membership?
28.
28.
Or even 29, because Montenegro. But here's the thing. I think a lot of people don't fully understand. I'm not talking about you guys. I'm just saying that a significant amount of people don't understand what it means, 2%. 2% means you spend 2% on your defenses. You don't pay anybody. You don't go to the U.S. Congress and, give 2% of your GDP in an envelope and go, here you go. It's like with Netflix, you have to prolong your membership. No, it's like you actually have to engage in some spending on your own defenses, because 2% is relatively enough for your country to be maintained in the terms of its security, of its of its armed forces. And it's annoying to me when, and it's actually something that Trump did correctly when he said that Germany prefers to make deals with the Russians over Nord Stream 2, and then complain to the U.S. that, hey, you're not helping us in Europe when it comes to Russian aggression or something like that. So it's a bit hypocritical for European countries like Germany to criticize the U.S., which are spending way more than 2%. They're spending like 4%, and those are like
3.6.
Or yeah, okay, but that's close enough to 4 than 2. So I think it's all about the idea of also what was NATO built upon? NATO was for us to say that NATO was all about integration and countries being together. No, it was a response basically to the Soviet. Well, no, the Warsaw Pact was after was after NATO, but it was basically but it was basically there as a response to, hey, we can't let countries fall into the domino effect. So I think the goal of NATO has been already reached. The Soviet Union has been dissolved. It has, I would say, mutilated into something else, into a entity of a completely different caliber. But I think now the goal of NATO is, I think what Piotr mentioned already when he was dropping all those statistics, that I think right now the focus of the world is not any country. It's actually an asymmetrical warfare in the style of terrorism. So perhaps NATO should shift its I guess focus onto something else. I mean, of course, the Russian Federation is a type of being, you could say, in the international arena that is in fact poking you all the time, and if you poke it back, it's going to overreact. But I don't think there's a particular goal in NATO right now, except for basically spending. But it seems to me that the goal of spending on your defenses is like a common goal. You don't have to be a part of a defense. Yeah, you don't have to be a part of a defense alliance, of the official defense alliance run by the U.S. essentially to spend on your defenses.
It's like this what I mentioned like during our last conversation, that like countries, they are like becoming way more dependent instead of independent. They are dependent on NATO, they are dependent on United Nations, they are dependent on the European Union, in Asia Eastern, in like all of those organizations, countries, they became way too much dependent on them instead of being independent. Because as we are talking right now, what if those European countries are prepared for this kind of withdrawal? What would happen if America would left us during these alliances? What would happen then? What's gonna be reaction of Russia, right? That comes the questions, because just as we mentioned right now, just few countries are spending enough money according to the NATO to like prevent the attack. I mean, few researchers show that anyways Poland wouldn't protect Europe from the even first attack of Russia, right? But I mean, what would happen with the Baltic countries, which they are lying in the interest of Russia? What would happen with them?
That's a good question. Like, there's this argument that if Russia would attack, that they would be able to get to Warsaw within a day.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this worry, I guess, the naysayers of in the U.S. of, like, from what I've heard of NATO, is that this fear of us being pulled into this border conflict or this little conflict that might happen in somewhere around the world, that could create another world war, that if this flare-up happens on the border of, say, Stalingrad, that United States would have to be pulled into that, or if Turkey shoots down another Russian plane, that could create a war, something very minor that would go from that could have been resolved easily, then probably go to huge, potential conflict.
I mean, I have to agree with Piotr. The whole idea of Poland always protecting Europe is kind of annoying to me. Like 1683 when we, Sobieski defended Vienna from Kar Mustafa, I think. Mm-hmm. 1920 when we essentially, the Polish, protected, I would say, the rest of Europe against the red wave of Bolshevism. I think that Poland is, in fact, this unappreciated entity that is willing so hard. This is kind of nationalistic / patriotic, what I'm saying right now. But I'm just saying, it's kind of funny how we're always, used in a way, and then we get nothing back in return. All we get is, people complaining about, oh, look at us, celebrating our independence with, 2 marches instead of 1. What is up with that? I just think that people should just back off and let us do our own business,
Well, according to the NATO, as you mentioned, I'm always asking myself what NATO provide for European countries except the Balkans. what they've done to us. Because our participation, it was huge among the American policy on the Middle East. I mean, I'm talking also from my own perspective, because I have one family member which was participating in the Polish army in Afghanistan, and he was supporting American mission, let's we say, under the alliance with other countries. And then it comes to my head, like, what they provided except that. Like, I mean, Yugoslavia, right? They solved their problem. I mean, I have huge thanks to the Holbrooke, the whole American administration for solving that problem, for Davos, right? Sorry, oh madam, not for Davos, but Denver, I think. That happened somewhere like in Texas, I think.
What, the peace agreement?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. Like
Somewhere in Texas, yeah.
It goes out from in the military base of Americans. But yeah, it always comes to my question: what Americans done for NATO instead of like, because we participate in their missions and they participate just in one, and actually they almost created a conflict why they were bombing if I'm right, Sarajevo, and they bombed the Chinese embassy, right? And they were almost close to the world conflict, right? So what they provided by NATO to us.
That's a question that, you know, I'm every day in a way. Well, not every day. I'm gonna be lying on air, but I'm just gonna say, like, that's something I also think about. Like, what is it that has resulted positively for us in the long term, not in the short term? Like, oh, we got some recognition. No, but what is a long term that we are really benefiting off of? You know, that is something that is, you know, a question that's, you know, can be answered any other day, but we need to have more information. Now, I would like to shift the topic into something else, and I'm going to put you guys on the spot because I was thinking that's going to be funny. I would like to deconstruct a little bit of the Polish society and the culture today. And what I want to focus on is the bus culture of people in buses here in Warsaw. Because when I was going here, and it just... the amount of things that strike me, you know, and I wasn't actually on my phone, so I was able to see those things because in the buses you constantly see people on their phones, on their headphones, and they're so isolated. So I'm going to put you guys on the spot and ask you guys a question because I like to make people think, you know, I don't want you guys to be always prepared. So, Marco, what do you think, what is one thing that just grinds your gears in the bus or any public transport here in Warsaw? Like something that not necessarily like drives you up a wall. It can maybe in mentally, but something that you just go like, and you just shake your head, you know?
I have a good one. When people stand right in the middle of the door when you're getting out, like stand to the side. Don't stand right in the middle like that. To like maneuver my way around you as I'm trying to get off the bus. Like,
and they look at you as if you're crazy for like getting
or if you
out,
bump
yeah?
into them, they give you like a like.
I know.
Come on, like
That's
let me
true.
get off the bus. Like just please step to the side, let people off the bus, and then you can get on the bus.
Well, the worst when you're gonna pop on the guy with the track pants, then you are in big trouble, especially on the other side of the Vistula River, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's
what,
true.
man?
The other side of the Vistula River.
Those guys in like sweatpants and stuff.
Sweatpants, you know, I mean,
And the hoods
like
and stuff.
The hoods,
you know.
sport shoes, when you're gonna like...
Usually bald gentlemen,
Oh.
you know, so...
Okay.
So I have a tip for that kind of problem. Like always sit in the front of the bus, like in the first half, because in the back half it's like oblivion. Like there's no influence. The driver can't see what you're doing. If there's some trouble, he doesn't care. So it's always good to sit in the first half of the bus because then like you're kind of secure with the driver because he has the mirror to see what's happening. That's what I think.
And especially in the night bus when like they have like really funny trip with the homeless people and like
I hate that. Yeah.
Okay, so what about me and what I hate? Well, you know this situation when you're driving in a bus and someone's talking on the phone like that loud that you hear whole his like life story, you know? That's what I hate the most because once I've heard like how his kids like feeling, but sometimes it's even worse. For example, that he have like prostate cancer or he's going for like some like really do I need to hear about this? Like it's a public space and sometimes you know I love to read books in the public transportation because like you know I'm just isolating myself. I'm in my book and times go by fast because like to my university it's like 30 minutes by bus. So I'm just opening book and like times go by fast. But I cannot literally focus on my book when someone's talking about those kind of topics. I mean, like even like the basic one. Come on, it's just 20 minutes. Don't you can stand and go out on the like closest bus station and just like talk with your, I don't know who, like family member, lover, doctor, whatever. But out of me, that's what I hate. In my opinion, that's what's annoying me. Not hate, because I'm not the hater person, but annoying me, you know? It's like sometimes I want to just ask him like, oh, you have a cancer, what about me? Like, I'm gonna have some cancer because of you, so like...
Well, that's a bit extreme, but I
have
have to agree with you. It's one of those moments that are so annoying and just driving you up a wall when you're experiencing them, but when you talk about it, it's hilarious. Like, I had the same situation when someone was talking about some bladder infection, and he goes into detail, and he's like, oh yeah, my doctor prescribed me this because apparently it's leaking, and it's just like you're just sitting there, and sometimes what I do is I just stare at them and just listen and just sometimes nod for them to realize, but they don't care. They're in their own world,
Yeah, that must really suck. Like, ooh, like damn, like.
One thing that has been annoying me today, particularly, is people on their headphones that listen to music which you can hear, and they're so oblivious to it. They're just, just sitting listening to, and this guy today was listening to like death metal techno, and I don't know how else to describe it because
interesting combination.
Because you can only hear those weird beats and those weird electronica music and some shouting, and I'm just, and the worst thing is like that was the whole ride, and I was literally starting to kind of get into it, and it was kind of cool, but then it's just like, what am I doing with myself?
No, but like also what annoys me in the public transportation, especially in Warsaw, are drivers. Literally, I think sometimes that like they feeling that they are driving like big truck. I mean, like, I have sometimes, like, off-road trip with them. I'm not feeling that I am on the highway. I'm feeling like I am, like, out of somewhere, like, on the village, and I have, like, the most incredible trip of my life. But I feel comfortable when I'm sitting, but when I'm, like, in a bus, like, on the peak hours, when everyone is standing and everyone is just, like, when you put music to it, it looks like the pretty good concert, but it's not a concert. It's, like, buzz, and, like, people can get hurt. Like, once I've seen, like, even, like, old woman which fell down, and he didn't care. He just moved it, and she was, like, she had problems even to stand up. So I was thinking, like, man, like, don't you have a mirrors, and don't you see what's going on, like, back of you? So...
Or they brake really hard.
Yeah.
So, like, just trying to be that asshole.
I gotta admit, that's kind of my secret pleasures. When I'm sitting down and they hard brake, I sometimes like to see how people, like, what happens with the other people. Like, obviously, if there's a granny that falls, I go to help her up. But sometimes, like, you see that people suddenly grab the railings or whatever, and they just look at the driver direction, and they just go, like, nod their heads. And it's just like, yeah, well, it sucks for you because you don't have a seat, And that's my tip. If you guys don't want to stand up, sit next to the window all the time. Because if you're sitting next to the alley, that means you have to get up. But you have to get up if there's an older person. But if you don't want to get up, sit next to the window, music, quiet enough, and then you just engage in philosophy looking out the window in a depressive manner, because that's how it always is.
Especially during this weather.
So yeah, that's pretty cool to talk about. The I think that kind of segment is pretty cool to put you guys on the spot about bus culture.
Well, I think you should put this segment like always. I mean, not bus culture.
No, of course I'm gonna experiment with other things.
Topic.
So and since we're in a good mood, let's also talk about NFL. Which is what is it? What is it, Marco? What does it stand for?
The National Football League has their championship game.
Okay.
This Sunday.
Okay. What time? GMT Pacific.
It's probably 8:30 Eastern Coast time, or 12:45 Central European time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who plays against who?
The New England Patriots, who are the best team, and hopefully gonna win, versus the Los Angeles Rams.
Oh, okay.
So it's like this cross-coast kind of battle. Both cities met in the baseball championship, and the Boston team won.
Okay.
It's kind of like this Tom Brady, who's the quarterback of the New England Patriots.
He's so hot.
Been playing for like 18, 19 years in the league.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of controversial because, he wins a lot, but yet he also has, like, a supermodel wife. He has his whole, like, workout routine, which is, like, he kind of now shops, and it's, like, now his brand, which he says is how he's been able to play as long as he has. Because usually in the NFL, people only play for like 10 years, and that's a really good career. But he's done it for much longer. It's kind of like Bill Belichick, who's the coach of that team. Whereas
What is his name?
Bill Belichick.
What, is he Polish or something?
I don't know.
Oh, it sounds
Maybe
Polish.
Eastern European.
Well, Central European.
I think
So
he's
I'm
might
just
be
saying.
like Slovak.
Okay, but let's get to the meat of the matter. Why is it called football, not hand egg? I'm serious.
Like, you can argue about this all day.
No,
There's
I'm
been
not
this-
going to argue about this all
there's
day.
been
I'm going to
this-
argue about it now because I just don't get it. Why? It's first of all, it's not a sphere, therefore it's not a ball. So it's an oval, so it's an egg.
Yep.
And first of all, you kick it like how many times? How many times do you use your feet in the game? How many times do you have contact between the ball and the foot? Like once when you kick it?
So you could have many times, I guess.
Okay, couple times.
I could explain it, but.
And then you call it soccer because that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it's different than across the pond.
Yeah, it's weird on the other side of the ocean.
Yes.
Well-
I don't know either. I don't understand why they call it football.
Just like maybe.
Well, it's same as you could argue why rugby is rugby, right? Like,
Well, because the word rugby just sounds cool, it sounds tough, and they in New Zealand they do the haka dance, and that's pretty cool. And when you have American football, you have all those pads and a helmet. Ooh, you don't want to get hurt, but it's weird. They have all these protections, and then the point of the game is to basically headbutt each other, and it's like, okay, so why don't we just eliminate the violence, if you could call it that, It's like, what's the point? Oh, and you don't
No,
even
it's
have to
part
be
of
in shape, man. You just have to be fat in a way.
No,
It's like sumo, kind of.
I don't agree.
Well, okay, maybe I'm a bit extreme, but I'm just saying, when they visited the White House, who visited the White House that got like burgers and
that was college football.
Okay, exactly. But all those guys, above 300-pound guys, like. I don't think they're the type of guys that are training like, I'd say volleyball or European football players that, have a routine or drinking like those kind of protein shakes. So, that doesn't go into their hips or something.
Well, I think depends like about which position like player you're talking about, because those runners, oh come on, like they are like really in shape. I mean, those ones which they are, I don't know the positions, those ones which they exactly like stuck their head and everything, they are like those big guys which they have to block it, but those runners, they're like really in good shape. And I mean also like look how big American football team is. I mean like how many like guys, I don't know how many guys is allowed like on the field, because they have like many changes, right like during the
So there's 52 people on
exactly
the team. 11,
But there's not 52 people on
11 on each side.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 11 on the each side, but 52. So like, it's huge amount of people like playing the one team. Compared like to the football, which is like 11 on the field, and I forgot it.
There's like 5 or 6 on the
Yeah.
bench. But then again, it's like you have when there's 52 people on the on the chairs, on the reserve. Does every one of them get to play?
No, I mean.
How many of them get to play? Like how many are subbed in during a game, for example?
It varies, like, because each one could be a specialty in certain fields. Like, he could be really good playing against this player. Like, it's what I like about football is it's much like a chess match. Like, you have so many different moving parts.
With
You have so much-
cheerleaders.
you have so many different techniques and like ways. It's short sprints. It's like only 5-6 seconds every play. There's breaks in between every play. It's not continuous. So each time they line up, there's this different way that you could line up the defense, line up the offense to try to beat the what they're doing.
Yeah,
This
that's
is mind. It's just like this mind
Yeah,
game,
that's-
as much as it is a physical game.
yeah, that's the most interesting, because it's like what it's like in the head of a coach. I mean, like how he's planning the tactic, because like coaches, for example, in football, yeah, they are famous, but like among like those really famous clubs, but literally in American football, the coach, he is the brain of like whole operation, because when you're watching like football, like soccer, I mean, like right now
To make them understand, I know what you mean.
To make understand.
Yeah, I understand.
When we are talking about like the soccer, right? Like you have a coach, but he's not deciding what they're gonna be doing on the field, right? They like sometimes like how many fights they have between each other because why you didn't pass me? But the coach in American football, he's deciding that you're gonna pass to him, and there's like no other way, and they have to do that. That's the most interesting.
Well, I would say it's a very similar way in like European football. And I think in any sport it's like the coach basically can give you a tactic, but no, maybe there are conditions where you can't execute the tactic, so you'd improvise something else. And before every European football game, the coach also like tells you, okay, this is the formation they're in is also.
But there is like few types of formation. When like in the American football, they are still inviting a new one, right?
Yeah, like it varies, a lot by how you could not say have a quarterback on the offense and make run a play. But like as a coach, who's more important? Like you can't have a coach and have a football game, like because who's calling the plays, who's making the adjustments. But do you have to have a coach in not American football, but like
Yeah,
like
he can be
basketball, you don't need a coach.
he can be sent off.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that you could still win the game. Like there's been times in the past, especially where basketball teams didn't have coaches. The coach played on the, the football coach played on the court as a player.
Yeah,
And
okay.
like yeah,
but
in American football it's impossible because who's gonna give them tactic? Like
Yes.
I've seen like they have like huge books of the tactics and they are like keeping with them to not share to others. It's like really like their property. It's like all their mind put it into it. So
I
like,
think
and
every
each coach
sport.
have different tactic. I mean it's not like the tactic in soccer when you have like okay we're playing like triangles, so like the attacker is on the front and everyone knows this placement of the players. There is not like that.
Okay, but we're also comparing kind of apples and oranges because, like a football game, like
Well, they're called football.
okay,
so-
the soccer
American
game.
football or
So like
English
soccer,
football.
for example, what is like 90 minutes? Okay, 115, 15 maybe with overtime. NFL game, a typical one, a regular college one. What is that? That can be a couple hours. I know because I've been to one. Same with I've been to a basketball game in the U.S. I've been to a baseball game, and an NFL game, and those were the longest sport activities I have been participating in as an audience. I basically came there for lunch essentially because there's so much food going around. There's so much entertainment. The sport seems to be like one of the. It's kind of like with like Lego games, like all those VIPs are basically coming for them for dinner, and they don't really care. But all the fans are there, cheering. But in NFL, like all those American sports, like NFL, they're so long that it seems it's
But
like
seen,
you need
the
one
tennis
day.
Games?
Yeah, tennis are also, but
It's also
yeah.
like it's sometimes like the game can like last like half of a day. So
Yeah, but or cricket, for
Yeah.
example, that can be a couple days. That can be a couple days too. So I think sports should be limited when it comes to the amount of time that you have with them, because how long can a sport be?
I also want to talk about the halftime show. That's also a big part of it.
Well, yeah, okay, but how often does
there's
it happen?
controversy with that too, because Maroon 5 is playing,
No, wow, I'm going for sure.
but they had the controversy is that it's happening. The game is happening in Atlanta, Georgia,
Okay.
and there's no artists from Atlanta, Georgia, playing in the halftime show. And Atlanta, Georgia has like a lot of
I mean
history.
like Atlanta is the historical for a music, right?
Yes.
Like from Atlanta isn't coming from Atlanta exactly like Ray Charles. I mean like I'm not
He might be. Yeah, I think he's from Georgia. Yes. Yeah.
yeah, Georgia on my mind.
Yes, I think yeah. And then like you have all the rap music, and all the hip hop music that comes out of.
That's not music, sorry, man.
Exactly.
That's just noise.
Disco polo, so.
Oh yeah, you got me there.
It's just funny, like it just shows you how kind of divided, how like a little thing like a halftime show can divide people. How they might one of the channels might run a alternative halftime show with some of the Atlanta musicians playing in it. And I mean the halftime show is like only maybe I think 30 minutes long.
But what about it? Because I'm
It's
trying
just
to
it-
figure out what's the point.
It's just
of
that like they're
controversy.
playing the controversy that they are playing in Atlanta, and like Atlanta is the capital for like the American music, right? Like for blues, right? For jazz, like jazz mostly like for New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, for blues, this is like for gospel, this is the place like where it was born, and why they don't invite like the artists coming from like the place where everyone knows this place for a music, and they are inviting, for example, Maroon 5, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I personally don't think NFL it should be the platform upon which we appreciate real music. That's what I think, because, I mean, I don't know. We have plenty of good artists,
Well,
and we
good
have.
platform is bus. I think like Warsaw buses. That's
Yeah, that's always a good.
sharing the music.
That is yes, that is true. We
Like,
can.
you can discover like for example what black metal techno, right? Like I've
Yeah,
never heard
no,
about
that
this
was so.
type of music,
But
so-
what's funny is because that particular type of music matched the guy perfectly. Like he was like this taller student, kind of gothic, I would say. You know, I was a big. I
But
was standing right next to
Have
him.
you ever seen like that more like this hardcore metal they listen, more kind they are? That's so weird for me. Like because when you listen, for example, like the aggressive music, I think like you became as well like aggressive, like full of energy. But like with them, like have you ever like I mean in Poland, in case of Poland, have you ever like met aggressive like metal guy? That's like interesting also. I've never seen like for example metals fighting on the concert or something like that.
Well,
What
there's
happens, like,
type
on the
of-
hip hop. I
there's-
mean like there's a skinheads, right?
There's
they are not metals.
There's the mosh pit that everyone just
Yeah,
runs
but
around
this
in.
is like mosh pit and they are like, you know, having fun during that moment. It's not like, you know, on some rap concerts when like even like hip hop artists coming out of the stage and beating someone because like I don't know, he just showed to him like
Oh, yeah, I
suicide,
know.
which he didn't like it, so
Yeah, I know. People tend to be of a specific type of, intelligence. So what I'm thinking is that we can, wrap this one up. I think it was a good convo we had between each other. We're probably going to continue it after we finish talking here. Next time, we hopefully talk about some more politics and some more cultural stuff. But for now, thank you guys for coming. If you guys could, say your goodbyes, last word or whatever, that'd be awesome.
Hopefully the Patriots win.
well, I'm keeping fingers crossed for you, and well, I'm hoping that like today my trip to home by bus it's gonna be like way nicer than coming here. So
Okay, well, take the first half of the bus, the front. That's all I gotta say.
so
Thanks,
that's my
guys.
last advice. Thank you.